Cameroonians have about that conference. With that being said, let's dive straight into this video. This video will be a blessing for you. So do me a favor, click the subscribe button and share this video with a friend or a relative. By the end of this video, we are going to share with you the Southern Cameroon's civic authority framework. This is not a political movement. This is not a declaration of independence. This is a framework to guide civilians in Southern Cameroon on how to live with each other in challenging times like this, while we sort out the legal confusion in Southern Cameroon. Let's dive straight into that video.
The comments were not good. People were like, I thought this is a country, the people organizing this are coming from a country that is said to be bilingual. How come this thing is all in French? Wasn't the BBC there? Wasn't Deutsche Welle there? Wasn't, all this international media that is exclusively English? But more so, what about the Anglophones in Cameroon? Were they not supposed to listen to it? Why was it exclusively in French?
Yes. I totally agree with you. I totally understand the question, and I look back with a lot of regrets. The fact that we did not take into account the linguistic dimensions of the challenge. At the end, I was only given 5 minutes, and then when I started speaking, I was reminded, oh my God, time is gone. We must liberate the room. We only have 2 minutes. 2.
Yeah, I heard that.
So, I had to now try to squeeze what I said. And if you allow me, I'll say I had to squeeze what I said into what I thought were the most salient points I had to make. And that's what I tried to do. One of them, I don't know if with your permission, Chris, I'll just repeat,
sure.
Say what I really wanted the audience to retain. The first thing was what Mr. Chiroma himself reminded me of. He said, look, this fight, the fight we're engaged in, is the fight of a generation. That fight of a generation lies in the liberation of Cameroon. So that's the first and the most important takeaway from that conference.
It is said, we all heard, that those from Southern Cameroons who were present at that conference spoke in French and not English. It sounds like Fumban Conference 2.0. Before we listen to some highlights of that video, I want to make something absolutely clear. I am not here to be a leader of factions, militias, or movements. I am not contesting titles, positions, or legitimacy battles. My work is more narrower and dangerous than that. I am here to rebuild the legal and institutional foundation of Southern Cameroons. Because without that foundation, no leader can govern. No fighter can claim legitimacy, and no independence can survive. Underscore that. Leadership, my people, without institutions collapses into chaos. Institutions without law collapse into violence, and we have all seen that. Until there is a clear legal basis, defined authority, accountability, and continuity beyond personalities, arguing about who leads is not only premature, it is harmful. I will not accept any title that places me over people. I will accept responsibility only for building the framework that protects people from bad leadership. Take note of that. When the foundation is ready, leadership will not be fought over. It will be obvious. Now, let's continue listening to that video. But by the end of this, when we disclose the Southern Cameroon's civic authority framework, we will also outline the criteria of people that will be part of this conversation. Let's take a listen.
Moi, j'ai reçu un truc de la SRC aujourd'hui. Pour un recouvrement, pour un truc qui était une fraude. C'est-à-dire quelqu'un a essayé de nous frauder. C'est pas hier, hein, c'est aujourd'hui que je reçois ça. Une supposée dette d'une banque où ils ont fait une fraude. Et aujourd'hui, on nous...
Et c'est effectivement, je l'ai fait. Oui. C'est d'ailleurs pour ça qu'ils m'ont invité ici. Hein, sinon, ils ne voulaient même pas que je sois ici. J'ai oublié de parler d'une pétition que nous avons envoyée aux responsables de l'Union européenne, l'Union africaine, aux États-Unis, un peu partout.
Eric Chinger and Rebecca all spoke in French. These are Southern Cameroonians. We are also going to touch into the 3 different types of Southern Cameroonians. I told you we are going to solve this problem using frameworks so that you don't remain in limbo, in confusion. Because we can loop around like this for 100 years. But when you have a framework, you listen to someone, you understand what category to place them. They are not bad people. Eric Chinger is an amazing man. When you hear him speak, it is hard to fight him. To be honest with you, he is just an amazing human being. People have free will. Rebecca as well. You have to define your course in life, and then you look for like-minded people, and then you build a team with those people. This is the issue. We are trying to build Southern Cameroons using a family model. This is a nation about to become a country. Do you understand? Now, let's listen to what Ambazonians think about that conference. Take a listen.
That is exactly what I don't know. I think our elder brother Eric Chinger he lives in America. He knows English is widely spoken. French is barely spoken in the world. So I don't know why he is going to organize, or he's going to be part of a conference that is organized and only French is being spoken as a language, and he will accept. I mean, this defeats the point of what Issa Chiroma has been preaching. If Chiroma himself goes out there and make speeches in English and French, then, I mean, they could have given probably Rebecca Inocha or Eric Chinger to bring in their own part of the presentation in English.
A senior citizen from the Ambazonian group reached out to me about 3 days ago. He's 83. We had a very interesting conversation. He went on to ask a series of questions. One of those questions was, I'm 83. Will I be able to see Boya before I pass on? And can you help us get there? That was a very touching question that got me to reflect on what I'm doing here. It reminds me of the text in the Bible where Nicodemus met Jesus. They had a very interesting conversation, and I want to share that with you as we continue this session. So Nicodemus was a Pharisee and a member of the Jewish ruling council. He comes to Jesus at night, not to debate, but to understand. He asked, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who has come from God. For no one could perform the signs you are doing if God were not with him. That is John 2:3. Nicodemus takes this literally and is confused if you look at that conversation closely. The Bible is not just for spirituality, my people. This book was designed to help us live a good life on earth. Jesus explains to him that very truly, I tell you, no one can enter the kingdom of God unless they are born of water and the Spirit. Flesh gives birth to flesh, but the Spirit gives birth to spirit. Nicodemus, if you look at that response, is still struggling. Imagine this. The Pharisees have been the people that taught Jesus was against them, not understanding that even the law they acquired from Moses was inspired by this Jesus they see. If you look at that conversation closely, Nicodemus was still struggling with what Jesus had said. And Jesus Christ went on to say this: you are Israel's teacher and do not understand these things. In other words, this truth was already present in the scriptures Nicodemus studied. So you see, the story of Southern Cameroons has always been before us, before these elders. They've never studied it. And when he looked at the caption Tika, he said, that sounds like a Bali name. I asked, you are 83 years old. The story of the Tika people spans 1,600 years. We migrated from Sudan. He said he thought it was a Bali name. I'm sure he heard Tika and he heard Tita. I said, no, that is your story. So God took me as far back as 1,600 years to understand who we were, our story, and who we are today, so that I can better understand the future that lies before us. So this is the conversation, and this is exactly how that conversation with that elder went. I followed this blueprint. Jesus then points towards to the cross using an Old Testament image. He said this: just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes may have eternal life in him. I lifted up a staff here. People didn't understand that. These are all spiritual emblems that is guiding this journey we are all in. It's more spiritual than physical. So the conversation culminates in the heart of the gospel. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Do you understand, my people, that when we believe in our true story as Southern Cameroonians. We don't need to twist it. We lay a solid legal foundation. God will be on our side. But if we choose to go by the playbook of La République du Cameroon, manipulate things like they do, we will lose this battle. We say, oh, let's pick up guns the way they do. And that is not what God wants for us. The young men are bearing arms right now. We will guide everyone. No one will be excluded in this journey. Moving forward. This is where we find ourselves. Where do we go from here? One thing I want to let you know, and then we'll continue. Ambazonia is free to pursue political negotiations. But any agreement with La République cannot be legal. It cannot be legally binding on the status of Southern Cameroons. I just want to lay that to rest. Because the underlying jurisdictional question was never fully resolved. We'll keep listening, and then we will set a distinction between the three different types of Southern Cameroons using a framework. Let's continue listening.
Who go into battle to take into account what lies on the other side, to take into account what their own resources and forces are. Because when you don't, you either have a long drawn-out war, or you'd be subject to defeat, or you'll be unable to achieve any meaningful objectives within a meaningful time frame.
Here, enumerating the efforts of the people. Who has failed who? Is Chiroma failing the people, or the people actually failing Chiroma? Because I think Alice Income was of the opinion that the people would have done more to facilitate Issa Chiroma returning home and taking over the presidency. But it seems from your own assertion, the people are doing what they ought to be doing.
Alice Income is constantly inviting people to take their power. It's in their hands. If 1 million Cameroonians decide that they'll pick up Chiroma from the airport and take him to Etudi, they will. It'll be hard to see the regime bring down that many people. Okay? But is that something that should come from Chiroma? No, not at all.
One thing I want my brothers and sisters from the Ambazonian camp to understand is politics is more strategic than tactical. Ambazonians have indirectly helped immensely to maintain Pobia in power without knowing it. And I'll explain further. When La République citizens hear Ambazonians urging them to go into the streets over a rigged election, they do not hear solidarity. They hear pressure with an agenda. Here is the internal logic most ordinary La République citizens run through, even if they never say it loud. First, they know elections are rigged. This is not new information to them. They have lived with it for decades. So when someone outside their political community suddenly becomes very vocal about their elections, it raises suspicion rather than awakening. Secondly, they read the motivations not the message. The thought process is very simple. If these people are this invested, it's not primarily for us. It is for their own political project. The soldiers that have lost their lives from La République in southern Cameroons are sons and daughters of citizens of La République du Cameroon. You might say, oh no, we are fighting the government, we are not fighting La République, but they know they've buried their sons and their daughters. Then these people from abroad that have been leading this battle for 9 to 10 years, all of a sudden becomes so interested in their progress. You've never paid attention to this. That is why I told you it was the illusion of change from inception. Chris Anu brought Issa Juruma's daughter on his platform. Issa Juruma went to Bamenda and said, do you know Chris Anu? He is a secessionist and he is a best friend of mine. Politics, strategy. Let me tell you something. You see this election, Ambazonians who for 9 to 10 years claim they are not citizens of La République du Cameroon went and voted for Issa Juruma Bakari participating in the elections of La République du Cameroon. Strategy. Paul Biya can use that and say, oh, you see, these people are part of this country. We just have internal challenges. And that dismisses the 9 to 10 years of work that you've put in to show the world that you are not part of these people. And it's because your story is, first of all, distorted. So whether that assumption is fair does not matter. Politically, perception is reality. Do you see how desperate the Ambazonian leaders are? You can tell. That's why I said, when you dress, you ask someone to tell you how you look, because if it's up to you, you are okay. But the world works on association, not isolation. So you ask others to tell you, how do you look? You ask others to tell you how you look in that dress. I am that mirror to help us. I said 70% of the problem is with us. 20% is with La République du Cameroon and 10% is with the UN. I said that for a reason. So if we start focusing on that 70%, the 20 and 10%, we will overcome that. I told that elder, it is possible for me to help us have a nation on a condition that we cooperate. Not that we come together, no, we support the work. We will have that freedom. Third, La République citizens fear being used as leverage. Street protest, my people, carry real cost, arrest, injury, job lost, and surveillance. They have been raised their entire life to understand that you are their enemy inside the house. You dismiss that. The history books they have studied their entire life tells them a different story about Cameroon compared to the history books you have studied about that same country. We factor all of this into consideration. Take a look at how many Southern Cameroonian activists are involved in these elections. To citizens of La République, this raises a red flag. And we are not mindful of that. When the loudest voices pushing for confrontation are not the ones who bear the cost, people instinctively pull back. Nobody wants to be a pawn in someone else's tragedy. And the last, it triggers a defensive nationalism. Even citizens who dislike the regime begin to think, this is still our country. That is what they are saying to themselves. Change has to come from us on our terms, not from outside pressure. At that point, the conversation shifts away from electoral fraud towards sovereignty and order. That shift benefits the regime. Ambazonian pressure unintentionally helps La République du Cameroon neutralize dissent. The government can say quietly or publicly, see, this is not about reform. This is external agitation. That framing gives hesitant citizens an excuse to stay home and give the state cover to crack down. So yes, my people, indeed, many La République citizens step back not because they suddenly trust the system, but because this sends misalignment of interest. If we protest now, it strengthens their cause, not ours. That single belief is enough to collapse momentum. This is one of the hardest truths, my people, in political struggle. You cannot mobilize a people by appearing to want their crisis more than they do. And then leadership does matter. Some say the people should stand up 1 million and rally for Issa Churuma Bakari and install him as president. Leadership. For the Christians, Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt. Jesus Christ spearheaded the movement for Christianity. George Washington was the general that led America to independence. Leadership matters, and the inability to identify, respect, and follow leadership is one of the biggest challenges we have. The Ambazonians, they went on the street. We have young men on the ground bearing arms, but you see we are making no progress. And here is the harsh reality. When the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer, you will approach every problem as if it is a nail. But you don't have to approach every problem in life as if it is a nail. It is because the only tool you have in your toolbox is a hammer. So we want to encourage La République to become Ambazonia, and they haven't seen any fruitful result out of Ambazonia. So they are reflecting. This is a very defining moment in our history. We have the English heritage of order. It has run the world for 300 years. If we don't take advantage of this moment, 65 years is gone. 10 years is gone. we will be left behind and will be a laughing stock in the war. Southern Cameroonians. Let's keep listening.
Say this conference or whatever it's called, I may see it as a sham, because first thing, like you said in your monologue, the agenda presented by Isaac Chiroma is not what is being followed. I can't imagine a conference is being held, even though it's held in Paris, and we have Southern Cameroonians that were present. I'm talking here of Rebecca Enocha and Eric Chinje, that could even give a word in English, but they never brought it up. And I think it was all about the sons or the death of late Anika or somebody. Yeah. So most of the time was being wasted talking on it. It was not really a waste of time, but I think what Cameroonians want to hear is the way forward, like you said. Some positivity moving, because Cameroonians were already like, okay, we're done with Issa Chiroma. He's saying nothing, nobody's saying anything. But I think for the lawyers coming up with this press conference, it really energized them and give them some hope that, okay, something may be cooking in the background.
If you observe closely how I covered this election, initially I called this the illusion of change. That does two things. It triggers an emotion in citizens of La République du Cameroon to prove to the world that this is not an illusion of change. Secondly, I looked at the leadership. Just 2 months, Issa Chiroma Bakari said, I'll bring down this regime. And I looked at it, I'm like, I don't see any plan. You see the time I take to understand the problem, come up with frameworks, went back as 1,600 years through the Tika initiative to find myself. You see the journey God is leading me through. This kind of gradual studies and frameworks is what will bring about long-lasting change. Not boom, 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 everything is just a nail. This cycle that we are in right now, almost every movement in Africa has followed a similar pattern and got stuck somewhere and can't make progress. Now we'll be contributing money to maybe bail out those who have been arrested for kidnap or ransom, some who have been arrested because of how they raised money to finance the revolution. This is what we will be dealing with right now. Without law, without a framework, we will loop in this cycle. Almost all the movements in Africa have leaders abroad like this, ended up in the same place. When you study that, you ask yourself the question, what can you do different? With a good case like what we have in the Southern Cameroons, no union treaty.
The language issue. We know that English is the language of diplomacy. It is the language of international business. It is the language of science and technology. And for this group to go to France and hold a conference and speak totally in French, it really boggles the mind. One would think that the lady that you called Rebecca Enocha and people like Eric Chinje, who are fluent in English, could have said something, or at least plan the conference should have been planned in such a way that English people that wanted to express themselves in English would do that. And since this matter is international, that is what they should have done. We know very well that La République prides itself in their so-called multiculturalism and bilingualism. And even Issa Chiroma himself, when he was the Minister of Communication, he knows very well that that is what La République has been promoting, the so-called bilingualism and multiculturalism. So where is the bilingualism? Where is it? So
I'm glad to hear how that senior citizen articulates They are picking up my language. Yeah, that English is the diplomatic language of the world. I outlined how English is actually controlling the world and has been doing so for 300 years. That is to help you understand who you are. But one thing that I'm confused about when I listen to those from the Ambazonian camp speak, it sounds as though they are part of Cameroon, and at some point it's like they don't want to be part of Cameroon. If they have a meeting in France and they decide to speak in French, why are you concerned about that? Why? You are not part of La République du Cameroun. Let your tone, your language, your choice of words reflect your conviction. Sometimes we get angry because roads are not being maintained in the northwest and the southwest. It's like we are saying we are still part of La République du Cameroun. Or we were part of La République du Cameroun, when legally we have never been part of La République du Cameroun because there is no union treaty. Do you understand, my people? Now let's use a framework to distinguish between the three different types of Southern Cameroonians. Remember, I told you, we are not Cameroonians by legitimacy, we are Cameroonians by learned acceptance. Because I can distinguish between a Democrat and a Republican by just asking one question. I can distinguish between a British and an American by just asking one question. Let's use this framework. Now, in the United States of America, I can easily make a distinction between a Democrat and a Republican by asking this one question. When something is wrong in society, is it primarily the responsibility of the government to fix it, or individuals, families, and communities? And then I wait for a response. What they say will tell me who they are. A Democrat will say something like the government should play the primary role using policies, programs, and regulations. That is a Democrat. This is what a Republican will say. The responsibility should rest primarily on individuals and civil society, with government as a last resort. That is a Republican. Then if you want to know the difference or make a distinction between a British and an American, if I had to conduct a survey, this is the one question I will ask. Is freedom mainly about being left alone, or about having a fair system that looks after everyone? This is what someone from Britain will say. Freedom means security within a stable system. That is the British mindset, predominantly. American will say freedom means individual liberty, and that is the foundation on which this country was built. Now let's bring this to our context. Only one question will help you understand the difference between these three Southern Cameroonians. Remember, we are Cameroonians not by legitimacy. You have the passports, you have the birth certificate, you have the ID card, but there is no union treaty. So there is no legal foundation for this relationship. But individuals within our community, we have been raised with citizens of La République du Cameroun. So we have become Cameroonians by learned acceptance. So I'll ask this one question, and you should ask this question to every Southern Cameroonian. What legally gave Cameroon authority over southern Cameroons after October 1st, 1961? Just ask this one question and then you listen. Now, number one, real southern Cameroonians will respond this way. There is no union treaty. UN Resolution 1608 did not transfer sovereignty. No treaty was registered under Article 102. Authority was never lawfully established. Their focus is jurisdiction, trusteeship laws, and incomplete decolonization. That is a real southern Cameroonian, and that is how they will respond. Now, this is how Ambazonians, remember I told you, Ambazonia is a subset of southern Cameroons. Ambazonians will respond this way. They will say, a union existed, but was violated. 1972 or 1984 broke the deal. That is an Ambazonia. Independence was restored or reclaimed. That is the mission they are on. The problem is betrayal. We came into a union through a gentleman's agreement. That is an Ambazonian rhetoric. A typical Ambazonian rhetoric. We will clarify that with a subsequent video, but that is a typical Ambazonian rhetoric. Now, they will say the problem is betrayal. No marriage certificate. You say betray how? Not absence of a union. Their focus is breach, resistance, and restoration, not whether the union ever legally formed. That is a typical Ambazonian. Now, let's look at a southern Cameroonian by learned acceptance. And if you listen to Mr. Eric Chinye, he falls in that category. They are not bad people. It's preference, learn acceptance, way of life people have accepted. And some will pass on with this mindset. So if you don't identify people based on the cause that you've chosen for your life, you will always be roaming around because you're trying to use the framework of a family to build a nation. So they will say this: Cameroon has been one country for decades. That is a Cameroonian by learned acceptance. The world recognizes Cameroon. We should reform the system. Legality is less important than stability. To a southern Cameroonian that has become a Cameroonian by learned acceptance, legality is less important than stability. So their focus is normalization, practicality, and adaptation. And they often avoid the legal question entirely. So through their speeches, how they speak, don't be angry with people in this war. People are free to take their stance and choose what path they want in life. Let's listen to an excerpt of an interview published almost 8 years ago between Issa Churuma Bakari and Barrister Harmony Popka. That will serve as a foundation for what I'm about to say next.
Is that the government knows that as far as there is no act of union between Southern Cameroon and the Republic of Cameroon, they do not want to discuss the issue of Southern Cameroonians, and he tends to dilute it by referring to his own region.
So Cameroonians or Southern Cameroonians by learned acceptance ignore, avoid the legality question. Barrister Harmony Bobga said there is no act of union. We build our entire case around that, using our legal identity, Southern Cameroons. Let's continue listening.
I would like to ask the minister, when you escaped from Cameroon after you were harassed in this country by this government, and you met us in the Bronx, the language you gave out against the president of the Republic, is that the same language you are maintaining now that you have been rehabilitated and made a minister after disposing of your party virtually? You may laugh, but it is a serious matter. In Cameroon,
Please.
Every time I watch this video and I see Sajuruma Bakari laughing like that, my stomach squirms. But I have to remain calm. I told you, you need a stable mind to go through this crisis. No emotion. You can't build a country on emotions. But let's keep listening.
Please.
Now, you should remember, that is why reflection is very important. It was Barrister Harmony Bobga, teachers and the lawyers that went on the street. That is Agbo Bala on the side of Barrister Harmony Bobga. This is when it all started. Watch this clip.
I say this because we have young advocates who are undergoing training. We want them to graduate. We went to court today.
We have young advocates who are graduating. So this is someone that is concerned about the next generation. The senior citizen I had the conversation with 3 days ago, he's 83. This is one of the issues in our community. If we will make progress, we will have to address this. We care very little about the next generation. That senior citizen talked about one of the leaders leading the Ambazonian movement, how that individual was a child, that individual was born in his hands, that individual used to run around on the street and all of that. I don't want to call names because I don't want chaos. And I listened to all of that. I'm like, that individual is probably in their 50s. So you still have it in your mind that that individual was born in your hands and you're 83. This is a big problem in our community. If not solved, we are going to struggle for a very long time. We still have 17th century thinking in our community, and it's affecting us enormously. I mean, like maybe 1500. My people, even Jesus Christ was born in a family, was the son of a carpenter. Today you go to church to worship him. God made all of that for a purpose. So that when you feel all high up, he reminds you that your savior was the son of a carpenter. How do you expect leaders to emerge in your community if you see people this way? People don't grow. Some people assume, oh, this is my son, and they never paid a franc or $1 to send you to school. This kind of language holds us back than anything else. So you will not respect a leader because you saw them grow, because you were in the same class with them. Americans discovered this long time ago. That is why you see their economy is rapidly progressing. They give opportunity, identify leaders when they are young, respect those leaders, and their community is blessed. We are still thinking about how that individual grew up in the community, how they were your friends in the classrooms, Tell me where we are going with this kind of thinking. And these are individuals that have traveled and lived in America for a very long time. You are a pastor or a lawyer in the community. A member of your congregation or a client comes in and share with you their personal problem. As they are leaving, the next client is coming in. You share with that client what you discussed with the client that is walking out. And when they discover that they walk away from you, you lose business. Professionalism. Treat people with respect. All of a sudden they say, oh, I'll look for a white lawyer to handle my case, not you. That is business, leaving the community. I will go to a white church rather than come to your church. That is a member of your congregation. Gone. Treat people with respect. Why? Because you see them that way. The lens we have been programmed. This old man is 83. They build this community. Jesus Christ was a son of a carpenter. Even the president of America was somebody's classmate. You think a leader should appear from the sky? No, they will be born and raised in your community. And that is how God works. And so we destroy the morale based on how we perceive people, how we perceive leaders that God sent to us. And then we say, oh, we want help. We want someone to help us. Do you understand? Now, let's continue listening to that clip. But if we don't make these adjustments, you need to adjust your lens. You as a father, you are a custodian. You are a steward, even to the child that you gave birth to. That is God's child. That is why you see Samuel Eto'o is one of the best soccer players in Africa, and the father of Samuel Eto'o is not. People come into this world with their gifts. Donald Trump is the president of America and his father is not. I mean, this is happening before our eyes, and yet we fail to pay attention to. People are called on earth, born into the world for a mission. Whether they came through you or you saw them in your community, you went to school with them, you are friends with them, you can be the best friend of someone that will save Southern Cameroons. And when you realize that this is who God has called this individual to be, please adjust that lens as to how you see that person. If not, you will destroy your own self in the process with that kind of mindset. I respect people's calling. It's not about age. He went on and on about the age thing. I said, no, my father is your elder brother. My father, you're 83 years old. My father is your elder brother. That means my father would have seen you as that junior brother too in the community growing up. But he never saw life that way. That is why classrooms are not enough. How you are raised matter. My father raised me different. Even the conversations we had mutual respect for each other. I said, my father will be 4 years older than Pobia. And yet, this is how our relationship look like. And then you think today somebody will show up that they are 83 and it means something to me. I respect you if you are contributing. Not because of how old you are. Our people are suffering. We want solutions. Age is just numbers. And I don't worship the past. I've made that clear. I don't worship history. What will help us make progress, that is what I welcome. Let's keep listening. So don't forget, this man would have been one of the foundations of this movement. But we have not seen him that much for the past 9 to 10 years. just few statements he made, I'm like, no, this somebody that should have been handling most aspects of this revolution. And I'm sure if they listen to him, we wouldn't be going with Ambazonia today, and the world would have heard us by now.
Refuse us to enter the court. If they refuse us from being common law lawyers, that would be a visa for us to exit.
Before you heard of Mancho BBC, before you heard of the IG, before you heard of all these different groups and presidents abroad, these are the individuals who started everything. Brave and courageous to go on the street and say what they think and say, if the change doesn't come, we will exit. Brave man. And we will make sure we give him his respect where respect is due moving forward. Now I want us to listen to a short clip from the founder of Ambazonia. Listen to how he explains the history of Southern Cameroons. And then we'll go on to identity and choice. And then we will disclose what the Southern Cameroons civic authority framework looks like. Let's take a listen.
To revitalize, to bring back Ambazonia. And he got these people to pass a law thinking that they were wiping it away, only to find out that the black and white of interpreting that law means the United Republic of Cameroon is extinct, and it means the union of the two countries that form United Republic of Cameroon has been dissolved, and once that union is dissolved, the two countries that formed it become free.
I want you to pay attention. Look at how old this man is. That means from the time he started with this initiative right up to this age, at least he had studied well enough to be very factual about his understanding of this issue. That the countries came together. Listen carefully. He'll be asked a question. Listen to how he responds to that question.
And that is why La République de Cameroon, which was no longer existing, came back into force. Ipso jure, automatically, without any need for anybody saying anything, the British Southern Cameroon came back into force with its constitution.
How did the two countries come together, by the way?
The two countries came together by a fraud of the British. I'll tell you how it happened.
The two countries came together by fraud of the British.
We got self-government in 1958. Southern Cameroon had self-government. British Southern Cameroon. We had established a modern democracy, parliamentary democracy in our country. And an upper house of traditional rulers called House of Chiefs, an elected House of Assembly, and a government headed by a prime minister. Now, in 1960, Southern Cameroon became independent.
In 1960, Southern Cameroons became independent. This thinking is controlling everyone running behind that name. They think it's just the freedom. No, the mindset of the visionary is controlling you all. Pay attention to this. This thing is more spiritual than physical. I've never ever heard this. That Southern Cameroons had their independence in 1960. This is your history. I mean, we are talking about incomplete independence, incomplete decolonization in 1961. But he is saying we had independence in 1960.
With the promulgation of the Southern Cameroon.
And then some will come around here and tell me that he probably knows what he's saying. If you know and you don't do, you don't know. Let me repeat that again. If you know and you don't do, you don't know. This tells me he doesn't know even the history of Southern Cameroons. We learn from the best, we do, and then we teach. This is another issue in our community. You can look at the UN records, study documents from the UN about our story, and share with our people. They go on to cite a book written by one of their professors about their perspective of this history, mixed with all sorts of propaganda that is not accurate, and tell you, no, forget about the UN. Go listen to that individual that has written a book on the subject. What I'm giving you is the most accurate fact about our history. That is arrogance. It's like, I'll talk about Henry Ford or maybe Elon Musk producing electric vehicles and all that, and then you cite a top mechanic in Bamenda. I'm not saying that mechanic is not good. They are good, but they are doing their job maintaining vehicles. But you can't compare that mechanic with Elon Musk or with Henry Ford. Doesn't make sense. This is a global standard. The UN is the global standard. So even if you say their system is flawed, first of all, start by understanding what they did, explain it to them based on what they wrote, how they conducted the plebiscite, and not twist it, not manipulate it, because this will not last. We will only build mediocre societies, broke societies, societies that only produce poor people that can never compete at the global standard. And that is what I'm very careful about. Let's create a society that our people don't end up just like local champions. You see, Etofis now is a global player because he acted in such a way that could place him at that level. We should be able to build a country that we have players in business, in law, different departments that can be recognized globally because of their thinking, the quality of their mind, accuracy, facts, precision.
Constitution, order in council. Coincidentally, I'm seeing a copy of it in your place here. This is the Southern Cameroon Constitution, order in council. It was launched, it came into effect on the 1st of October 1960. The same day, the Nigerian Constitution, order in council, launched Nigeria onto independence.
My people of Southern Cameroons, you see what is going on with the Ambazonian thing? And I want to ask you a question. Is that your history? Even the older citizens that lived at that time, is this your history? Is this documented that you can follow the progress that we have made as a people? And this kind of message aligns with what the UN records say about us. This matters. I want us to touch on identity, choice, and the Southern Cameroon's question. There is a hard truth we need to face if we are serious about building a country. You cannot build a nation the same way you build a family, because that is what I see most of us trying to do. Everybody come together. Your input matter. No. Families are held together by blood, patience, and unconditional tolerance. Nations, especially at defining moments, are built by clarity, conviction, and shared understanding. History shows this clearly. And let me start with an example many people miss. During the American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin was one of the loudest voices for independence for Britain. But his own son, William Franklin, remained loyal to the British Crown. Father and son stood on opposite sides. One family. We are talking about someone that is not even from your family. And you're trying to make sure that everybody comes together when people have shown you that this is the path they've chosen. So we are dealing with frameworks now. And with this framework, I started with a question, right? You ask that one question, you are going to know who is a Southern Cameroonian, who is an Ambazonian, and who is a Southern Cameroonian by learned acceptance that they are citizens of La République du Cameroon. That framework eliminates argument, anger, fighting, trying to force people to change their mind. No. Father and son had to go their separate ways. William Franklin finally left the United States. The father became a founding father of America. They had to say goodbye. A nation is not built on emotions, precision, clarity, assertiveness. The founding fathers did not purse the American project to sit endlessly at the table with those who still wanted Britain, or those who were confused about where they stood. They moved forward. History sorted the rest. In America, we have the Democrats and the Republicans, and they are having debates because they have all accepted individual freedom as the foundation for this country. People who want Britain are not here. So they can move over to La République du Cameroon. So we are talking about debates of democratic values within the framework of America, those who want America. Ambazonia is really binding us with La République du Cameroon. You've heard it from Gojindinka. Ambazonia is like going through hell to get to heaven. Southern Cameroons is saying, we never even joined, which is the truth about our history. And all we have to do is make sure that we follow the legal path to gain our freedom, to complete the independence, complete the decolonization of Southern Cameroons. It's that easy. What Ambazonia is creating doesn't exist. That union that they are claiming existed, the gentleman's agreement, doesn't exist as one of the tools through which nations come together. A plebiscite is interest, not a union. After the plebiscite, a tripartite conference based on Resolution 1608 was supposed to be held between Southern Cameroons, La République, the foreign state, and the UK. A treaty ought to be signed, ratified, and registered at the UN under 102 of the United Nations Charter. That doesn't exist till date. So Ambazonia is really, whether you like it or not, working for La République and not for Southern Cameroons. Do you understand? Ambazonia is, whether you like it, you see how this election turned out? Paul Biya has probably, I'm sure, but they are not that smart, so I doubt if they see this. You see this election, the interaction between Ambazonia and La République du Cameroon has opened up many loopholes that Paul Biya can use to just bring this Ambazonia initiative to an end. But they are not that smart. So, but if you don't know, that is what you did, knowingly or unknowingly, just through your interactions with La République du Cameroon during this election. And some even went and voted. Emotions don't build a country. What happened between William Franklin and Benjamin Franklin does matter to us today. Some people are born Southern Cameroonians, but will not end up Southern Cameroonians. That is not evil. It is not treason, please. It is called choice. You can't deprive people of their ability to choose their path in life. From their language, from their reasoning, from their instincts, you will know where they stand. And once you know, you must respect their decision. Others may leave one position and arrive at another later as we go on to clarify things. Once they understand their story more clearly, that is how political maturity develops.
60. The same day, the Nigerian Constitution, Order in Council, launched Nigeria onto independence.
Then let's listen to what Foncha said. If a union treaty does exist, Foncha would have signed, Amadu Ahijo would have signed, the British would have signed. It would have been ratified and registered at the UN, and we could see it today. It doesn't exist. Let's listen to Foncha, and then we will wrap up with Southern Cameroon's civic authority framework. Let's take a listen.
It did not appear to me that that was going to precede the legalization of the draft constitution. So the very August, I had to go back to him and remind him about the resumed constitution. When he did not answer me in September, I reminded him. But unfortunately, on 1st of October, I used the draft to declare federation and unification.
And the comments were not
federation and unification.
So he used the draft constitution to declare federation and a union. That is illegal based on international law. That is why I said no taxation without representation moving forward. La République du Cameroon extended their administration into a UN territory without documentation. This is not sentimental. This is facts, and this is our story. What do we do in a time such as this? There will be chaos everywhere. We have armed groups on the ground. Civilians are at risk. Our society is unstable. If care is not taken, this will be framed as some Biafra. This will be framed as another insurgency group in Africa. If care is not taken, this is how our case will be framed. We are going to need lawyers, humanitarian professionals, serious elders, institutional thinkers, and diasporal professionals. My number is on the screen, and you can reach out after this message if you want to be involved in bringing about stability in the lives of civilians while we go through this legal clarification. Now, the Southern Cameroon's Civic Authority Framework, that is the SCCA, is a temporary civilian framework created to protect civilians, preserve basic civil order, and maintain legal clarity in a territory whose final political status remains unresolved. Because we are going through this doesn't mean you do as you please in society. So this is designed for that purpose. It is not a declaration of independence. I want to make that as clear as possible. It is not a government. It is not a political movement. When a society is at this stage, this is the kind of structure we need while we sort out the legal confusion. Its sole purpose is civilian protection and institutional restraint during a prolonged governance breakdown. Why this exists, or why we are instituting this? When governance collapses and political status is unresolved, civilians suffer first. Institutions disappear if care is not taken. Rules become improvised. That is, people think of what they assume is right, and that becomes law. We can't thrive under such chaos. Harm replaces order. If you think somebody is a black leg, or if you think that somebody is an amber, all of a sudden you make certain decisions that put people's lives at risk because you think, because we are in a situation like this, just do as you wish. No. This goes both for civilians or those bearing arms. And La Republic citizens, I said, if you are a soldier governor from La Republic du Cameroon, ask the government of La Republic du Cameroon to provide for you a union treaty between La Republic du Cameroon and Southern Cameroons when you come over, with whatever task they give you. Now, the Southern Cameroon's civic authority framework exists to prevent that outcome by providing a non-sovereign civilian and temporary framework focused on protecting life, rights, and records until a lawful political resolution is reached. That is the goal. Just to remind you, this is a synopsis of the framework. And those who are lawyers, humanitarian professionals, serious elders, institutional thinkers, and diaspora professionals, you can reach out. This is just a synopsis of what this framework looks like. So legal and civic foundation, which is one of the premise this document addresses. How will people live in society in times like this? That is very, very important. The authority is grounded in the historical existence of Southern Cameroons as a distinct administrative territory prior to October 1st, 1961. So what kind of law did our people live under? Common law. So we look into that and we look at what the international law says, and we are able to come up with a framework that can help guide the community in challenging times like this. The absence of a conclusively registered international instrument transferring sovereignty. That is why we are doing this. Give you the reason why. International norms recognizing temporary civil administration under necessity. The inherent right of communities, that is, we have the right as a community to organize lawful civil order when governance has collapsed. When we don't have a government like this, community or society have the right to come up with frameworks like this to maintain some order while we sort out the problem. Its legitimacy does not come from elections. So we should know that, because some people are like, who authorized that? Oh, who said that? So its legitimacy doesn't come from elections, armed force, or unilateral declarations. What is the purpose of SCCA? The authority's mandate is strictly civilian and includes civilian protection standards, community-based civil dispute resolution, documentation of right violations using verified evidence, coordination of humanitarian access and civilian protection norms, maintenance of civil records related to population, property, and displacement, non-military representation in legal and humanitarian forums. All functions are non-coercive and civilian-centered. So it's not force or the weapons and trying to get people to do what they don't want to do. No, this process is easy and everyone should cooperate so that we can have a stable society. Even businesses can flourish under this environment that we find ourselves in. It is important to understand what the SCCA does not do. That is even more important than what it does. The authority explicitly does not declare independence or sovereignty. It does not act as a government. It does not participate in or endorse elections. It does not levy taxes or compulsory contributions. It does not exercise criminal punishment powers. The SCCA doesn't do what I have outlined. Take note of that. Its jurisdiction is limited, temporary, and protective. Institutional discipline and accountability is another key indicator of this instrument. The SCCA is structured to prevent personal power and ego. Leadership is rational in a time like this. That is how we conduct ourselves to show the world that our claim is legitimate. No permanent executive authority exists. Terms are limited. Decisions are recorded. Transparency and accountability are mandatory. Any individual or group involved in kidnapping, ransom, civilian intimidation, forced levies, or ambush of humanitarian access is automatically disavowed. Now you want to know about the duration. How long will this last? Because we are looking at 2 to 5 years to sort out this legal confusion. The authority exists only as long as necessary. It will dissolve upon a final lawful resolution of political status of Southern Cameroons or the establishment of a recognized successor, which is a civil administration. It claims no permanence beyond necessity. Now let's close with this. This is a civil institution, not a movement. It replaces improvisation with discipline, symbolism with structure, and emotion with responsibility. In times like this, its legitimacy rests on restraint, accountability, and the protection of civilian life. Because this is how I see life, my friends. You give birth to a child and you raise them to the age of maybe 18, 20, 30. And someone thinks they disagree with them, agree with them, and they just step out there, boom, and that individual is gone. That is a waste to our community. Because after all of this is said and done, We will need to build southern Cameroons. Where will the people, the talent, come from? If we end up and everyone is angry with each other, bitterness everywhere, how are we going to build southern Cameroons? That is why this instrument is important in a time such as this. It's not a political movement. I have disclosed the category of individuals that can be part of this conversation, and they will have access to this document. Again, lawyers in our community, some have been reaching out already. This is the work we have to do. Humanitarian professionals, serious elders in our community, institutional thinkers, and diaspora professionals. These are the individuals that can sit down and we show them what this document is all about so that they can go on to institute that and help put the community in order while we go through this transition. I shared with you last time that this project is a must for every Southern Cameroonian. If you ever hope to return back home and live in peace, if you want to run a successful business even back home, this project is a national emergency. I shared with us that we must prepare a professional UN submission backed by international law experts, treaty law specialists, historians, diplomatic strategists, policy writers, a communications team, and a project manager. Not a government and a cabinet. It should be clear that there was no tripartite conference. There's no treaty binding us with La République du Cameroon. No article registered under 102. No constitutional guarantee. So there's no marriage certificate. Whatever problem you ever have in Cameroon, there is no document to reference. This is how absurd it sounds to say this is what we wrote. Can we fall back on this if my rights are being violated? That doesn't exist. So there is no legal union. Our status is incomplete independence, incomplete decolonization, not secession, like Issa Churuma Bakari referenced Chris Ano as a secessionist. Not rebellion. We are not rebelling. And it is not internal conflict. Do you understand? Now, to prepare the legal documents, hire experts, travel to the UN, and sustain the project. This is between 2 to 5 years. We need a budget between $700 to $1 million. Again, it could be more and it could be less. This is an estimate. This is not money for war. I want to underscore that. This is money for research, documentation, legal drafting. When we hire all these experts and have a team, a reliable team, their tasks are assigned to them. They will do their findings, bring that together, and then we will compile a document that will make our case credible before the UN. That is the job of this expert. This is the peaceful and lawful path I shared with us last time. So this is not for weapons. Now, no Cameroonian, I'll leave you with this. No Cameroonian curriculum mentions full independence, free association, independence by joining another state through treaty. They only teach Southern Cameroon was too small to stand alone. The UN forced them to choose. They voted by joining, and this hides 90% of the real story. And so the work that I have done is to bring out every part of this story that is relevant for our victory. And with this team, we'll be able to bring about that clarification. And this problem will be solved between 2 to 5 years. Share this video with a friend or a relative. Let everyone in the community be informed. Click the subscribe button so that you will be the first to be notified every time a video is uploaded. Until next time, remain blessed.